Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Recha Kodesh. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Exodus, the 22nd chapter, as we continue in the judgments, or the laws that the Lord is giving Moses here concerning the children of Israel. If a man shall steal an ox or a sheep and kill it or sell it, he shall restore 5 oxen for an ox and 4 sheep for a sheep. And so as it says, if you're guilty of stealing, if you steal 1 ox, you have to restore it 5. That is, if you steal it and you end up killing it or selling it, so it's lost, it's gone, you're going to restore 5 times that amount. And if it's sheep, it's going to be 4 times that. If a thief be found breaking up, that is today called a breaking and entering, and be smitten that he die, there shall no blood be shed for him. Now, this scenario is more so particularly in a nighttime setting, because usually that's when thieves really do anything, right? Concerning breaking into a house in the nighttime. So it's excusable because you being the homeowner or the person dwelling in the house, you may not be able to get a good visual of who this is, right? You don't know what it is they're trying to do here. Your life may be in danger, so you defend yourself, right? You might end up slaying them. At that point, the Lord says it's excusable. You're not guilty of murder in that case. However, if the sun be risen upon him, there shall be blood shed for him. So if the sun is up, this is daytime now, and you catch a thief, stealing or whatnot, or breaking in, and you slay him, you're going to be guilty of murder, right? That's what it means by blood shall be shed for him. So for his death. For he should make full restitution, meaning what really should happen if he was caught in the daytime is now you can identify who he is. And so the law there would be that he would have to make full restitution. So whatever it is that he is stealing or damage that is done, he has to restore that. And if he have nothing, so he's poor or he can't afford to do that, then he shall be sold for his theft. So he will be sold, into captivity, slavery, servitude to make up for what he has stolen. If the theft be certainly found in his hand alive. So, as it says, whether it be ox or ass or sheep, he shall restore double. So if he steals something, he gets caught, they find whatever was that was stolen with him, he has to restore double that, which is different than verse 1, right? Verse 1, he's either killed it already or sold it. So he can't, you're not getting it back at that point. So they have to restore, in this case, either 5 times or 4-fold. Verse 5, if a man shall cause a field or vineyard to be eaten, and shall put in his beast. What this means is if he's allowing his animal to eat or graze in his vineyard or his field, and shall feed in another man's field. So if his beast ends up going and feeding and eating in another man's field and ends up eating his, valuable crops of the best of his own field and of the best of his own vineyard shall he make restitution. So if your animal goes into somebody else's field and starts to eat their crops, if it ate their vineyard or their olives or their grapes, or whatnot, you would have to restore what was eaten from the best of your crops in your vineyard or in your field. Verse 6, if fire break out and catch in thorns, so that the stacks of corn or the standing corn or the field be consumed therewith. So either corn that's been plucked from I forgot the name of the thing, the stem, right? I forgot the exact name for it. But anyway, it's been plucked off of that and grouped up in one area, or it's still on the stem. or whatever the case is, if somebody starts a fire and the fire, basically gets out of control and it goes and burns somebody's crops, as it says, or the field be consumed therewith, he that kindled the fire shall surely make restitution. You're going to have to make up for that. And that's going to be very costly. Because you know how quickly fire spreads. It's not like they had firefighters, that they had ways of putting out fires, but it's not like today. If a man shall deliver unto his neighbor money or stuff to keep, this is like safekeeping, and it be stolen out of the man's house, if the thief be found, let him pay double. Okay, so that thief is going to have to pay double of whatever it is he stole. However, if the thief be not found, then the master of the house, which, before we move on, let's take a look at this. The thief, yeah, there we go. So as it says in the NIV, the thief, if caught, must pay back double. Okay, cool. Now, if the thief is not found, then the master of the house, which is the one who the stuff was given, or the owner of the house, right, who the stuff was given to say, hey, can you keep this for me, shall be brought onto the judges to see whether he have put his hand onto his neighbor's goods. So they got to do an investigation to find out if, since the thief wasn't found, was this a culprit? Like, was the culprit the owner, the one who was actually given the goods to look over? Has there been any foul play here? So they have to basically do that and then judge the matter going from there. For all manner of trespass, whether it be for ox, for ass, for sheep, for raiment, or for any manner of lost thing, which another challengeth to be his. So there's a problem, a dispute. Oh, I gave this to this person to watch over for me. I came back, it's not there. He says he doesn't know where it is. Or this is mine, this person says it's theirs, but I know it's mine because of such and such. It says here, the cause of both parties shall come before the judges. So they'll bring that matter before the judges to hear it, because some of these matters are really a case-by-case situation, and every bit of the scenario matters. Like today, when they do investigations, that's why they gather evidence. And in order to do that, they speak to people, they go to the different scenes, they go to places where these people who are involved in this situation would have gone. They trace events, because all of those things vary by case. And in each case, it can't be, it's not always that there's a uniform way to handle it. Now there may be a uniform judgment once found who's guilty and who's not, but arriving at that decision sometimes has to be case by case. So this is why it was important to bring their cause to the judges. It says, and whom the judges shall condemn, he shall pay double unto his neighbor. So whoever the judges find guilty has to repay the other party twice as much. And so to be in that role of a judge was a very important and crucial role, right? And you see why when they became corrupt, the Lord spoke out against it so much, as we went through in the various prophets who would speak against, whether it's the northern or the southern kingdom, and how the princes and the elders and the rulers and so on were oppressing the people, because they actually had a good amount of authority, right? Going back to the law, who they would deem or who they would condemn is who would have to pay back. So imagine these judges are now bribed and they're not judging righteous judgment. How messed up and how oppressive and corrupt of a society do you think that would breed? This is one of the main outcries in which the Lord sent the prophets to speak out against, in their times. If a man deliver unto his neighbor an ass or an ox or a sheep or any beast to keep it, and it die or be hurt or driven away, no man seeing it. So one day it gets away, it escapes or whatever, and nobody's able to trace it or find it. then shall an oath of the Lord Yahweh be between them both, that he hath not put his hand onto his neighbor's goods. So they're going to take an oath before the Lord to basically say, to take an oath, one, taking an oath that he indeed did not kill the animal, he didn't hurt it, or, this isn't deliberate, right? There are no ill intentions here. And the owner of it shall accept thereof, and he shall not make it good. So once they take this oath, then the animal may be hurt, killed, or lost, but the one in whose care it was given would not have to do anything about it. And the reason is because when you take an oath before the Lord, if you are telling a lie, or if you, swear falsely, or you take a false oath, that judgment is going to come from the Lord upon you. Okay, so that's going to be sufficient for the owner who suffered loss to know that, all right, it's either genuine, and at that point, it's kind of like nobody's fault, or this person is being mischievous and the Most High is going to judge him. Verse 12, and if it be stolen from him, he shall make restitution unto the owner thereof. So the causes were if it dies, or is hurt, or it escapes and nobody sees it. But if somebody steals it while it's supposed to be in the care of who it was entrusted to, that person has to now restore it back to the owner. So if it was sheep or whatever, a beast, they have to provision one for the owner now. If it be torn in pieces, then let him bring it for witness, and he shall not make good on that which was torn. So if it ends up being killed by some wild animal, bring the body, bring the carcass, and if you can prove, show that evidence, okay, this is what happened, then he doesn't have to pay back anything. If a man borrow aught of his neighbor, aught meaning anything, and it be hurt or die. So this is typically in the case of oxen or cattle or livestock or things along those lines, right? So if it be hurt or die, the owner thereof being not with it. So this happened in the absence of the owner. He shall surely make it good, meaning the one who borrowed would have to pay it back. And this is taking into account the consideration of the owner, because it may be that indeed it was hurt or it did die. But from the owner's perspective, he might say, well, I gave it to you in perfect condition. How did it get hurt? How did it die? It may not be enough for him for you to just tell him that, oh, it just happened by accident or chance. So to keep things good, you just have to make it good. You have to pay it back. In this case, when it says make it good, it depends, right? In this case, they might accept money or an actual replacement of whatever was borrowed. Verse 15, but if the owner thereof be with it. So if this happens in the presence, right, of the owner, he shall not make it good. So the one who was borrowed it will not have to pay anything. And the reason is because, as it says, if it be an hired thing, it came for his hire, right? Because when you borrow an animal like this, right? Like, how do we put this? Let's say today you go to rent a car, right? Sometimes they have like day trips and so on and so forth. What the Lord is saying here is it's not for free, right? It's not. If you're not borrowing it free. You're charged. And so if you borrowed it and something happened to it, but the owner was present, then you don't have to pay anything back, because that's deducted from the amount that you used to borrow it, as the Lord is saying here. So if it be a hired thing, it came off his hire. Whatever you would pay back would just be considered the amount you paid when you hired it in the first place. Verse 16, if a man entice a maid that is not betrothed, so this is a woman, a young woman, that is not betrothed. Now let's look into this word maid here. Yeah, Bathwala. So this is a woman that has a virgin, right? One in the sense of a woman that's actually never had sex before. So if he entices her, that is, he today you would say he spit game, right? He's spitting game. She's feeling him. He seduces her, right? And lie with her. So he ends up popping her. He shall surely endow her to be his wife. So basically, he has to marry her because he has humbled her. Let's go into that word endow. Mahar, which is to obtain or acquire by paying purchase price or give a dowry. So you basically, you once you take that, you have to go and obviously do the whatever you got to do to get married, right? You pay the dowry and you marry her, as it says, and she shall be his wife. But if her father utterly refused to give her onto him, meaning he doesn't want to hear it, he's like, hell no, this guy is not, he's not the quality man that I want for my daughter. I don't know why she wasn't thinking, whatever the case was, but I do not approve of this at all. Then in that case, obviously he can't marry her, but he still has to pay, right? He shall pay money according to the dowry of virgins. So he will pay, which is a lot of money, but he would pay because in this case, the father has now suffered loss because virginity was expensive in the sense that if you try to, especially in the ancient world, if you try to marry your daughter, she wasn't a virgin, but she wasn't officially a widow, most people wouldn't really want that. So he suffered loss and he had to be recompensed for that. Verse 18, thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. So witches, warlocks, they were to be put to death if they were found. Whosoever lieth with a beast shall surely be put to death. This is bestiality. Okay. Now, it's interesting. Let's see. Is bestiality legal in the United States? Near universal. So where? Near is not good enough. That means there's a certain area. West Virginia is the only remaining state that doesn't ban. This is 2025. That doesn't ban. Oh yeah. Ban bestiality. You hear this? Hmm. So let me specify this then. In West Virginia, so it's not explicitly illegal as a standalone offense. Shit, crazy. But it can fall under general animal cruelty statutes or face proposed legislation, as bills to ban it have been introduced but haven't passed, making it a legal gap in animal protection laws. This is crazy work. All right, so here it is, so much for America being a God-fearing country. Well, it's in the law, right? It's in the law here that if anybody lieth with a beast. Now, what does this mean? Does this mean that you got a cat or you got a dog and it jumps on your bed, or you're sitting in the couch and it jumps in the couch and it lays there with you? Now you gotta die? No. When it says lieth, it means to fornicate, to have indecent acts with it. Okay, that's crazy work, but the law is you're supposed to be put to death. But you know what America says? Nah, we gonna let it slide in West Virginia. Anyway, verse 20, he that sacrificeth unto any god, save unto the Lord Yahweh only, he shall be utterly destroyed. So as we're going through this, you can see here that these are also laws, right? We went through the famous 10 commandments, but you see here now these are additional, right, that the Lord is giving here. So that goes to show you that clearly the laws go beyond just 10. But you ask an average Christian, They'll tell you there's only 10. How can that be? Anyway, if you sacrifice unto any god, save unto the Lord Yahweh only, he shall be utterly destroyed. That is going into the first commandment, right? Not having any other gods before the Lord. Thou shalt neither vex a stranger nor oppress him, for ye were strangers in the land of Egypt. Now, when you go into the word stranger here, in the Hebrew, it's gar. There's a difference between the word gar in reference to a stranger or a foreigner, and the other words like nakar, and I think there's another one, which is referring to an actual one person of another nation, okay, because that's different. But here, it's referring to an Israelite, a foreigner, as it says, a temporary inhabitant, right? A newcomer lacking inherited rights. So maybe they weren't born in the land, right? Or they're newly migrated back into the land. You're not supposed to oppress or vex, when you go into that word vex, to treat violently, to maltreat, to do wrong, right? As though, oh, you're a foreigner, so, you don't get to do this, or you don't get to do that, or whatever the case is. You're not supposed to do that. As the Lord said, for ye were strangers in the land of Egypt. Okay, because at one point you were also strangers. Verse 22, ye shall not afflict any widow or fatherless child. And when you go into the word afflict, it's to, to basically mistreat, right? But in the sense that, oh, this is a widow. They can't really take care of themselves. So, just treat them however, right? To afflict, to be depressed, to be downcast, to mishandle. I saw something in here. Where is it at? Yeah, okay. To oppress, to depress, to afflict. So when you mistreat them because they're at a disadvantage in society, right? Being a widow or fatherless, it says, if thou afflict them in any wise, and they cry at all unto me, I will surely hear their cry, and my wrath shall wax hot, meaning the Lord is going to get angry, and I will kill you with the sword, and your wives shall be widows, and your children fatherless. What's an example of this? Well, picture a scenario. You have a man, for example, that goes and does whatever, right? He violates this. When the Lord says, I'll kill you with the sword, he can have many different scenarios play out. Okay. He can have foreign raiders. It may not even be a full national attack. He could just have like raiders or bandits or whatever come into the land, and you just so happen to be out at that time, working late, whatever the case is, and you get caught in that. Okay. But he can have many ways in which, you lose your life. And here it is. Now, your wives become widows, and this affects whoever is guilty. If you're a child and you're doing this, the Lord might take your father away, if he's wicked. Anyway, verse 25, if thou lend money to any of my people that is poor by thee, when it says by thee means among you, right? Any of my people among you, if you lend them money, thou shalt not be to him as an usurer. A usurer is a money lender, a creditor. Neither shalt thou lay upon him usury. So that's why it says that. Because typically when they lent money, they would charge interest. That's usury. But when you lend money, as it says, to the poor of your own people, you're not supposed to treat them like anybody else in the sense of laying interest on that. If thou at all take thy neighbor's raiment to pledge, this pledge is a security. So they borrow something, right? And then you take their raiment, their cloak or their garment as a security. Thou shalt deliver it unto him, by that the sun goeth down. And let's look up here, importance of cloak in biblical times. So in biblical times, a cloak or robe or mantle was crucial for survival, protection, and identity, serving as a bedding and essential covering, protected by law. That's how important it was. Um, then you have other parts of it, right? But the main part I wanted to get is this part right here, dealing with survival, right? It says a heavy outer garment for warmth at night, used as a blanket and protection from sun, rain, during the day. So it's very important and needful. And so that's why it was a law that if you took it as a security, you had to return that by the time the sun goes down. For that is his only covering, or his covering only. It is his raiment for his skin. Wherein shall he sleep? So if he doesn't have that, how is he gonna cover himself? And it shall come to pass when he crieth unto me that I will hear, for I am gracious. Thou shalt not revile the gods. And when you go into that, the word revile here is like to disrespect, right? Or to, to disregard, right? To take for naught. The gods are going into the judges, okay, like we read up above. Because when you go into that word there in the Hebrew, it's Alahayim, which means what it can mean divine ones, right? Angels, rulers, but it also means judges. And that's what it means here. And that's why when you go into the New Testament, when Paul spoke against, I think it was the high priest, those that were next to him smote him, right? And said, let me see what they said if I could find it. It was like, revilest thou the high priest, or something along those lines. Yeah, there it is. Acts 23. And this is verse 2. And the high priest Ananias commanded them that stood by him to smite him on the mouth. That was to smite Paul. Then said Paul unto him, God shall smite thee, thou whited wall. For sittest thou to judge me after the law, and commandest me to be smitten contrary to the law? And they that stood by said, revilest thou God's high priest? Because the role of the high priest would be considered also a judge. So that's why they said that. And what did Paul say? Then said Paul, I wist not, brethren, that he was the high priest. So I didn't know that he was the high priest. For it is written, thou shalt not speak evil of the ruler of thy people. He was referring to this law, right, back in Exodus 22, because it does say that, right? Thou shalt not revile the gods, nor curse the ruler of thy people. And to speak evil of is an example of a curse. Okay, so it's going to show you that this is all in the same vein, referring to the judge or ruler. Thou shalt not delay to offer the first of thy ripe fruits, and of thy liquors. When you go into that, it's like the juice, the wine, was it the juice of the grapes? Let's go into that word, liquors. Remember that all the first fruit belong unto the Lord. Yeah, juice, figuratively, juice, liquor. A metaphor used of that of olives and grapes, i.e. of wine and must. Because the Lord said that was all his. Okay. So it says here, the firstborn of thy sons shalt thou give unto me. But remember, they had to be redeemed. Because when it says, give unto me, as we're going to read in verse 30, likewise shalt thou do with thine oxen. So your first fruits, your crops, your firstborn male sons, well, male sons, interesting. Your firstborn sons and your oxen, right? And your sheep. So likewise shalt thou do with thine oxen and with thy sheep. 7 days it shall be with his dam, meaning the mother. So when you have that sheep or oxen for 7 days, it'll be with its mother. On the 8th day, thou shalt give it me. And how would you give it unto the Lord? It would be dedicated to the Lord and sacrificed unto the Lord. Okay. And ye shall be holy unto me. Now, before we get into verse 31, I'm going to get another precept on this here, 30. So this is Leviticus 22. And let me see here. Maybe I think it's 7. Nope. It's 8th. Yeah, 27. it says here, when a bullock or sheep or a goat is brought forth, then it shall be 7 days under the dam. The dam means its mother. It's going to be, because it's a newborn. So it's going to stay with its mother for 7 days. And from the 8th day and henceforth, it shall be accepted for, for an offering made by fire unto the Lord. That's how you give it to the Lord. Okay. So if it was, remember we read that before, if it was, your oxen or your sheep, those were clean animals and they could be sacrificed to the Lord. And if it was the firstborn, then it would be given to the Lord after the 8th day. If it was an unclean animal like an ass, then you would redeem it by bringing a sheep in its stead to be sacrificed, or you would break its neck if you weren't going to redeem it, because it belonged to the Lord. But concerning your firstborn sons, they had to be redeemed because the Lord wasn't, he didn't say, come and sacrifice your children. So they had to be redeemed. Verse 31, and ye shall be holy unto me, neither shall ye eat any flesh that is torn of beasts in the field. Ye shall cast it to the dogs. So any animal that is like killed by some other animal, like out in the field or in the in the wilderness or whatnot, you're not supposed to eat that. As it says, ye shall cast it to the dogs. So you can feed it to the animals, but you're not supposed to eat that. And that brings us to the end of the book of Exodus, the 22nd chapter. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha Kodash. Until next time, Shalom.